I trusted my husband. So when he said he was working late, I decided to surprise him. But after what happened, I learned that some surprises only end in heartbreak. The idea came to me on a Wednesday night. Mia was already in bed, and Ethan was playing video games in his room. Mike had texted earlier saying he'd be working late again, the third time this week. Big project deadline, he'd said. I'd sighed, warming up leftover pasta for the kids, while he was supposedly hunched over blueprints and models at his architecture firm. Scrolling through Instagram, I paused on a photo of Mike's co-worker's wife bringing dinner to the office. The whole team gathered around boxes of pizza, smiling. Mike looked tired, but happy. That's it, I whispered to myself, closing the app. I could bring him dinner tomorrow night, maybe his favorite takeout from that Thai place he loves. The kids would be at my sister's anyway for their weekly sleepover. Perfect timing. I smiled, already imagining his face lighting up when I walked through the door. It had been so long since I'd seen that look, the one where his eyes crinkled at the corners and that dimple appeared on his left cheek. We needed a moment like that, something to break through the routine we'd fallen into. So the next evening, I dressed carefully. Nothing too obvious, just my favorite jeans that actually fit right, a soft green sweater that brought out my eyes, a touch of the perfume he'd given me last Christmas, but that I rarely wore anymore. I ordered his favorites, pad thai, spring rolls, and those little coconut desserts he couldn't resist. I felt a little flutter of excitement as I drove downtown. When was the last time I'd surprised him? When was the last time we'd done anything surprising at all? Our 15 years of marriage had settled into such a comfortable rhythm that sometimes it felt more like living with a roommate than a husband. The parking garage near his office was almost empty, not surprising for 8:30 p.m. I grabbed the bag of food, checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror, and made my way to his building. The security guard looked up, startled to see someone this late. "Evening, Mum. Can I help you?" "I'm surprising my husband, Mike Reed. 15th floor, Reed and Associates." He smiled. "That's nice of you. Let me just—" He checked his computer. "Oh, Mr. Reed signed out at 6:15 tonight." I blinked. That can't be right. He texted that he'd be working late on the Westbrook project. The guard shrugged apologetically. "Says right here he left at 6:15. Maybe he went somewhere else to work." "Maybe," I said, pulling out my phone. No new messages. I called Mike, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Hey, where are you working tonight? Thought I'd surprise you with dinner." Nothing. No read receipt. No typing bubbles. "You might try his partner, Mr. Daniels," the guard offered. "He's still up there." I nodded, feeling slightly foolish with my bag of takeout and my carefully applied lipstick. "Thanks, I will." The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt longer than usual. The office was mostly dark when I stepped out, just a few lights on in the back where the partners had their offices. I heard voices, then laughter. I followed the sound and found Tom Daniels at his desk, jacket off, surrounded by what looked like half the junior staff. They had beer bottles and pizza boxes scattered across the conference table. They all looked up when I appeared in the doorway. I recognized most of them from company parties, including Sarah, the new designer they'd hired last year. Young, brilliant Sarah, with her perfect ponytail and her ability to make even a pencil skirt look comfortable. "Amy?" Tom looked surprised. "What brings you here so late?" I held up the bag of takeout, feeling more ridiculous by the second. "I thought I'd surprise Mike with dinner, but security said he left hours ago." An awkward silence fell over the room. I saw a few glances exchanged, Something cold settled in my stomach. He, Tom cleared his throat. He mentioned something about meeting a client for drinks to discuss revisions on the Westbrook project. Which client? I asked. 15 years of marriage had taught me exactly when someone was lying to me. The Westbrooks themselves, I think, Tom said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Sarah suddenly became very interested in her beer bottle, picking at the label. I see, I said quietly. Well, don't let me interrupt your work session. I'll just try to reach him on his cell. I turned and walked back to the elevator, my heart pounding. I wasn't stupid. I knew what those looks meant. I knew what that silence meant. In the elevator, I tried Mike again, still straight to voicemail. I texted, "Call me. Now." Nothing. I stood in the parking garage trying to think. Where would he take a client for drinks? There were a few places near the office they used regularly. I could check those. But as I slid back into my car, something else occurred to me. Something I'd been pushing away for months now. The late nights. The business trips that seemed to multiply. The way he angled his phone away when texting. The new cologne I hadn't bought him. My hands trembled slightly as I opened my phone and pulled up our cell phone account. We shared a family plan, and I rarely looked at the detailed billing. But now I scrolled through the most frequently contacted numbers. One number stood out, multiple calls and texts, almost daily for the past 3 months, many late at night or early morning. I didn't recognize it. I took a deep breath and hit call. It rang twice before a woman's voice answered, soft and slightly breathless. "Mike, I thought you couldn't talk until later." I hung up immediately, my hand over my mouth to stifle the sound that wanted to escape. So there it was, the truth I'd been avoiding. I sat there for a moment, staring at nothing, the food growing cold beside me. Then a thought occurred to me. The Lakeview Hotel. It was where the firm put up clients who came to town, where they held their annual Christmas party. It was only a few blocks away. I started the car before I could talk myself out of it. The Lakeview lobby was elegant and quiet, just a few people passing through. I approached the front desk, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure the clerk could hear it. "Excuse me," I said, summoning a pleasant smile. "My husband is meeting with clients here tonight, Mike Reed, from Reed and Associates. Could you let him know his wife is here with the portfolio he forgot?" The clerk typed something into his computer. "Mr. Reed is in the restaurant, ma'am. Would you like me to call over there?" "No," I said quickly. "I'll just surprise him. Thank you." The restaurant was dimly lit, all dark wood and white tablecloths. I scanned the room slowly, and then I saw them. In a corner booth, partly hidden by a decorative screen, Mike and Sarah leaning close together over wine glasses. His hand covered hers on the table. As I watched, frozen in place, she laughed at something he said, the sound carrying across the quiet restaurant. He smiled that smile with the crinkled eyes and the dimple that I hadn't seen directed at me in months. I could have left then. Should have, probably. Gathered my dignity and confronted him later, at home, without an audience. But something in me snapped. Those months of doubt and denial crystallized into a cold, hard certainty that propelled me forward. I approached their table quietly. They were so absorbed in each other they didn't notice me until I was standing right there, still clutching my bag of now cold Thai food. "Special client meeting?" I asked. Mike's head snapped up, his face draining of color. "Amy, what are you doing here?" I finished for him, apparently interrupting date night. Sarah pulled her hand away from his, her eyes wide. Mike, you said you told her? Told me what? I asked, my voice eerily calm. That my husband of 15 years is having dinner with his 29-year-old employee instead of working late on the Westbrook project. No, he must have forgotten to mention that. Amy, Mike stood up, reaching for me. This isn't. If you say this isn't what it looks like, I cut him off. I swear to God, Mike. The restaurant had gone quiet. I could feel eyes on us, but I didn't care. 15 years, 2 children, a mortgage, college funds, joint checking accounts, in-laws' birthday parties. All of it reduced to this cliché in an overpriced hotel restaurant. Maybe we should discuss this privately, Mike said, glancing around uncomfortably. I laughed, a sharp sound that surprised even me. Now you're worried about privacy. That's rich. I think I should go, Sarah murmured, reaching for her purse. No, stay, I said. Enjoy your evening. I'm the one who doesn't belong here. I turned to leave, but Mike grabbed my arm. Amy, please, let me explain. I shook him off. How long, Mike? He hesitated, and that was answer enough. You know what? I said. I don't even want to know. I'm going home. Don't bother coming back tonight. I walked out, head high, ignoring the stares. It wasn't until I was back in my car that the shaking started. My entire body trembled as the adrenaline drained away, leaving nothing but a hollow feeling in my chest. I drove home on autopilot, barely seeing the road through the tears that kept welling up. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the house we'd chosen together, with the oak tree in the front yard that we'd planted when Ethan was born, I had cried myself into a strange, numb state. Inside, I moved through the empty rooms like a ghost. The kids' school photos smiled at me from the hallway wall. Family vacation magnets cluttered the refrigerator. Mike's coffee mug from that morning still sat in the sink. My phone had been buzzing non-stop. Texts, calls, voicemails. I ignored them all and turned it off. Whatever he had to say, I didn't want to hear it. Not tonight. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine I couldn't bring myself to drink, staring at nothing, until headlights swept across the front window. Car door. Footsteps. Key in the lock. Mike entered cautiously like someone approaching a wounded animal. Amy? I didn't turn around. I told you not to come home tonight. This is my home too, he said quietly, setting his keys on the counter with a soft clink. Is it? Because it seems like you've been making yourself at home somewhere else. I finally looked at him. Or with someone else. He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache despite everything. It's not what you're thinking. Then what is it, Mike? Explain it to me. Explain how you ending up in a romantic dinner with your young employee isn't exactly what it looks like. It's complicated. I laughed again. That same sharp, humorless sound. Of course it is. Affairs usually are. He winced at the word. I never meant for this to happen. They never do, I said flatly. Did you sleep with her? His silence was deafening. Get out, I whispered. Amy! Get out! I screamed, slamming my hand on the table. The wine glass toppled, spreading a dark red stain across the white tablecloth, a wedding gift from his mother. Mike stepped back, shocked by my outburst. In 15 years, he'd rarely seen me lose control. The kids will be home tomorrow, I said, my voice shaking. You can see them then, but I don't want you here tonight. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Mike. The Lakeview seems nice. I hear they have excellent room service. He flinched, but nodded slowly. We need to talk about this, when you're calmer. Calmer? I stood up. the chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. You think this is just me being emotional? You destroyed our marriage, Mike. You broke our family. Don't you dare tell me to be calmer. That's not what I... Just go. Please. My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated myself for it. Hated that even now, with the evidence of his betrayal still fresh, some part of me wanted him to stay, to hold me, to tell me it was all a misunderstanding. He hesitated, then turned toward the stairs. I'll pack a bag. I listened to his footsteps overhead, the opening and closing of drawers, the bathroom cabinet clicking shut. 20 minutes later, he came back downstairs with a duffel bag I recognized from our last family vacation. I'll call you tomorrow, he said, pausing at the door. I love you, Amy. I know you don't believe that right now, but I do. I didn't answer. I couldn't. After he left, I mechanically cleaned up the spilled wine, tossed the takeout food I'd never delivered, and took a shower so hot it left my skin red and stinging. Then I crawled into our bed, suddenly too big, too empty, and stared at the ceiling until dawn began to seep through the curtains. The next morning, I moved through the motions of normal life like an actress in a play. I picked up the kids from my sisters, made pancakes for breakfast, helped Mia with her science project, and took Ethan to soccer practice. "Where's Dad?" Ethan asked as we drove home, his cleats creating little clumps of dirt on the car mat. "He had to go out of town suddenly," I lied, hating myself for it. "Work emergency." "Again?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "He's always working." "Yes," I thought bitterly. "Working. That's one way to put it." Mike called while the kids were watching a movie that evening. I stepped onto the back porch to take it. "How are they?" he asked immediately. "Fine. They think you're on a business trip." He was quiet for a moment. "Amy, we need to talk about what happens next." "What happens next?" I repeated dully. "What exactly did you have in mind, Mike? You want to come home and pretend this never happened? You want a divorce so you can move in with Sarah? What's the plan here?" "I ended it with Sarah," he said quickly. "Last night, after you left. It's over." I laughed, a genuine laugh this time, but with an edge of hysteria. "Oh, well, that makes everything better then, doesn't it? Problem solved." "I know it doesn't fix anything," he said, his voice strained. "But I want to try. Counseling, whatever it takes. I don't want to lose you, Amy. I don't want to lose our family." I closed my eyes, leaning against the porch railing. Inside, through the window, I could see Mia and Ethan on the couch, bathed in the blue light of the TV screen. Our children. Our life. "You should have thought about that before," I said finally. "I know," he whispered. "I know." We were silent for a long moment, just breathing on opposite ends of the line. "The kids will ask questions if you're not here tomorrow," I said finally. "I won't lie to them forever." "I'll come by after breakfast," he said, relief evident in his voice. "We can figure something out." "Figure something out," I echoed. "Sure." After we hung up, I sat on the porch steps for a long time, watching the stars emerge one by one. The same stars we'd gazed at on our first date, on our wedding night, on camping trips with the kids. The same stars that had witnessed every promise we'd made to each other and every one he'd broken. I didn't know what would happen next, if we could rebuild from this, or if the foundation was too damaged now. I didn't know if I could ever look at him without seeing them together in that restaurant booth, if I could ever trust him again. But I did know one thing. Whatever happened, whatever we decided, nothing would ever be the same. The life we'd built, the future we'd planned, all of it, had shifted irrevocably the moment I walked into that restaurant. Mike arrived the next morning as promised, looking like he hadn't slept. The kids ran to him, excited by his unexpected return, while I stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, trying to ignore how natural he looked with them, how right. "Can we talk?" he asked after the initial commotion died down. "Please?" I nodded toward the back porch. "The kids are watching TV." Outside, the morning air was cool and crisp. We sat on opposite ends of the porch swing, the one he'd built the summer after we moved in. Another lifetime ago. "I'm so sorry, Amy," he began. "I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but I am. It was a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life." "How long?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me. He looked down at his hands. 4 months. 4 months. While I was driving carpools and planning family dinners and worrying about why we weren't connecting anymore. 4 months of lies. Why? My voice barely above a whisper. He was quiet for so long, I thought he might not answer. Then, "I don't know if I can explain it in a way that won't sound like an excuse." "Try." He took a deep breath. "It wasn't about you, Amy. It wasn't because you weren't enough, or because I stopped loving you. It was, I felt invisible. At work. At home. Just going through the motions, you know? And Sarah, she looked at me like I was someone important, someone exciting. And I don't." The words burned my throat. "Not for a long time," he said softly. "Not either of us." "When was the last time we really saw each other, Amy? Really talked?" "We became roommates somewhere along the way. Parents who occasionally shared a bed." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that I'd always seen him. But the words stuck in my throat, because there was a grain of truth there. We had drifted, slowly, and then all at once, into parallel lives that rarely intersected beyond logistics and parenting decisions. "That doesn't excuse what you did," I said finally. "No," he agreed. "Nothing does." Inside, we could hear the kids laughing at something on TV. The sound twisted in my chest. "What do you want, Mike? Really?" "Another chance," he said immediately. "A chance to fix this, fix us. I'll do whatever it takes. Counseling, complete transparency, anything." I stared out at our backyard, the swing set he'd assembled when Ethan was 4, the garden boxes we'd built together last spring. So many memories in this space. So much life. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I admitted. "I don't know if what was broken can be fixed." "I understand," he said, and I could hear the fear in his voice. "But I want to try. If you're willing, I want to try." I looked at him then, really looked at him. The man I'd loved for almost half my life, the father of my children, the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world, or at least had once. His face was drawn with regret and lack of sleep, but his eyes were clear, holding mine steadily. "I can't promise anything," I said slowly, "but we can try. For the kids, if nothing else." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I warned. "This isn't forgiveness, Mike. This is... I don't even know what this is." "It's a start," he said quietly. "That's all I'm asking for." Inside, Mia called out for me. The real world, intruding on this fragile moment. "We should go in," I said, standing. "They'll wonder what's going on." Mike nodded, but as I turned to go, he caught my hand. Just lightly. Barely a touch. "I love you, Amy. I never stopped, not for a single day. I know that doesn't change what I did, but I need you to know it's true." I slipped my hand from his, the familiar warmth of his skin, now something that caused pain rather than comfort. Love should be enough to stop you from breaking someone's heart, I said. Remember that. I walked back into the house, back to our children, leaving him on the porch with the weight of what he'd done. What would happen next, I didn't know. Whether we'd find our way back to each other, or whether this was just the beginning of the end. All I knew was that nothing would ever be simple again. The trust was shattered, the foundation cracked. Whatever we built from here together or apart would have to be something entirely new. Looking back now, 2 years later, I can tell you that rebuilding a marriage after infidelity is the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than giving birth, harder than burying my father, harder than any challenge I'd faced before. There were days I wanted to give up, days I packed a bag, days I consulted divorce attorneys, days I couldn't look at Mike without seeing him with her. There were screaming fights and icy silences, counseling sessions where we said terrible, honest things to each other, nights spent sleeping in separate rooms. But there were other days, too. Days where glimpses of our old connection would shine through, where I'd catch him looking at me the way he used to, before all of this. Where we'd laugh at the same joke, our eyes meeting in that moment of shared humour. Small threads, rewoven day by day. The affair forced us to look at the cracks that had formed long before Sarah entered the picture. The ways we'd both checked out, taken each other for granted, stopped making an effort. It wasn't an excuse for what Mike did. Nothing could excuse that betrayal, but understanding the context helped us address the real issues. Are we fixed? No. I'm not sure we ever will be, not completely. The scar remains, a permanent mark on our history. I still have moments of doubt, moments where trust feels impossible. Mike still carries his guilt, sometimes visibly flinching when certain topics arise, or when he's running late and sees the flash of uncertainty cross my face. But we're trying. Every day we're trying. Sometimes that has to be enough. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Would you have made the same choice I did, or would you have walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to hear more like it. Remember, sometimes the deepest wounds can lead to the most profound healing, if you're brave enough to face them.